This is Ken, and we're at the IP Possibilities 2012 with Jeff Burke of Calix, and we're really lucky because we have an exclusive here. You have a report coming out Wednesday, April 10th or 11th?
11th.
And tell us a little bit about what this report is.
Sure. This is the Calix U.S. Rural Broadband Report. This is something that we've been compiling over the course of the last couple of quarters. In fact, this particular report focuses on Q4 of 2011, so October, November, December. And what we did is we looked at the data that over 45 of our service provider customers that are deploying Compass Flow Analyzer are utilizing their networks, drawing from about 70,000 endpoints in the network. And ultimately what we did was we started to correlate not only the traffic that was going across those networks, but then the IP addresses of each of the endpoints with the actual applications that were being delivered over these networks, and came out with some pretty interesting conclusions.
And so can you share us some conclusions with us?
Well, sure. A number of different directions we can go with this. One is just some fundamental differences in what's happening on data use across the United States. One is that 67% of the internet traffic today going across these service provider networks is video. It's streamed video. That's the downstream direction. And so it far and away blows away all the different types of traffic that's being generated by internet shopping, business services, social media, etc. Right? So it really points to how rapidly we're moving to an all video world. Interestingly, you look at it from the other direction, upstream, we're actually seeing about 52%, 53% of data upstream being driven by business services, right? Basically folks working out of their homes, people running home businesses, VPNing in for their work, those sorts of things. And so it's interesting to see this contrast between the upstream and the downstream and what the actual traffic is being utilized for.
Well, since people are working from home then, what sort of peakiness are you seeing throughout the day?
Well, it's interesting. When you look specifically at the data on an hourly basis, what we're finding is that service providers can start to identify proactively which of their customers are actually having good experiences, for example, with business-like type services. So, for example, whether or not they are using upstream consistently throughout the day, right, and have a traffic profile or a package that supports that. Or maybe they have subscribers that ultimately are batching all of their upstreaming at midnight, right? Maybe they're getting up and pressing the upload button, and in doing so are basically not having a good correlation between the packages that they're consuming and how they're actually utilizing the bandwidth in the network.
So one of the important things, this is really last mile traffic you're looking at primarily?
Absolutely. This is really correlating directly what traffic is flowing through the network to the specific endpoint devices, right? And so it gives us a lot of visibility into a number of other trends. We've regionalized this, for example, to find out that the West streams the most video, right? The Southeast does the most online gaming. The folks in the Northeast do the most online shopping, right? The folks in the Midwest tend to utilize business services more heavily than other regions across the country. A lot of very interesting data points, and it also provides a great baseline for a lot of other service providers to start to think about how their networks are basically operating in comparison to some of the generalized data across the country.
It gives you a kind of a baseline there, and I assume that this is all done anonymously.
It is, yes. What we're not looking at all into the content itself, for example, on an end user basis, just the IP addresses, and we're not disclosing any of the service providers that are part of this mix. That said, it's a very rich view of what traffic looks and feels like across rural America, and we think it provides a lot of opportunity for service providers to ultimately be in a position to really not only think about things like usage-based billing, right? But be more proactive and utilize things like behavior-based packaging to better match those over-the-top users to a particular package. Match the business services users to particular types of service packages that they might be able to pull together that not only include bandwidth, but may include other services in the home like extra support, high-level support queuing, better IT support, other sorts of things you might package into that in that environment.
Yeah, so the people who are less sensitive to paying for those services because it is about their job, maybe they're doing remote teleworking or so forth, they would be willing to pay, or their company would.
Exactly. It can lower churn, it can increase your revenue, increase overall subscriber satisfaction.
Now, these endpoints, were they all fiber to the home?
You know, there's a variation between copper and fiber. As a matter of fact, we actually did some specific analysis that identified that actually the fiber access service providers had nearly 3 times the overall data traffic going across their networks as those who utilize copper, which I think is very interesting. This whole concept of build it and they will come, right? That if you give people the opportunity to go out and utilize this bandwidth, they do. I think it could also be construed as some interesting data for the folks in Washington to be looking at, as well as how these high-end networks ultimately are leveraged very powerfully in very rural areas.
Yeah, people really do use them, and I suppose you could even look, probably within network, there's customers who have both copper and fiber.
Absolutely, and we can start to segment those customers in that manner. And again, I think a lot of this data is going to be very useful for service providers to baseline themselves and their aspirations in looking at what types of traffic and as well as services they can expect to go across their networks.
Well, and this is just the start, right? We're going to expect to see this on a regular basis?
No, absolutely. This is the first of a series of reports. We'll publish these every quarter, right? And our data set will increasingly get broader, as well as the number of endpoints covered will continue to get broader as well. So we'll have a richer and richer view of what's going on in the access network. In addition to that, we'll start having more granular data. We'll start looking at it on a daily and hourly basis, for example, to start to really track at a broad level exactly when people are utilizing this upstream and downstream traffic. And again, a lot of implications on usage-based billing as well as behavior-based packaging going forward.
Yeah, so you can start to correlate between events, perhaps, and data usage.
Yeah, and really target your marketing programs very, very granularly at specific types of users.
Yeah, so this becomes something that not only the network people use, but the marketing people use.
Absolutely. I think the usage goes across the company. One thing that the product is also very good for, this Compass Flow Analyzer product, is for troubleshooting, right? In terms of being able to correlate the actual IP address itself with a specific traffic pattern or application, right? Allows you to really have a deep insight into what exactly is happening at any given point in time in the network and correlate it historically.
Super. Well, Jeff, I look forward to seeing the report.
All right.
Thanks.
Ken. Talk to you soon.